Good afternoon and welcome to my little studio upstairs in the house above the streets. I didn't mean to say that. Welcome to my studio upstairs on the top floor of our house here in Mexico, and a good afternoon to you. I wanted to talk about some of the things that have been on my mind recently since I got back from England on Friday a week ago. And I've just made some little notes in my Leica notebook about the things that would be my script, if I have such a thing, for a video. But it was really to talk about the way the channel has gone and is going, and to ask for your feedback and your ideas. Because when I started this 3 years ago, I titled it Writing Life. And it was really an experiment for the production of 10 videos over a 2-month period in a little course that I subscribed to with Matt Ragland about just having the confidence and the courage, I think really, to get on and start a YouTube channel and not to worry about the editing process or using the different softwares that put pretty images or fine lettering on the screen that you finish after stopping the record process in producing a video. But the idea of that initial channel was me just sharing ideas in 10 videos only on my writing process. I'm a tiny little part-time author with 9 books done, 5 of which continue to be in print. But I'm a small channel, and I really just share the things that are part of my journey in bringing a book from here, from those ideas that occur to me, capturing them on paper, and then hopefully, whether it's through my AlphaSmart Neo or my MacBook, or using my little iPad, which I think is downstairs in the kitchen, and a little, what do you call it? I was going to say wireless, Bluetooth keyboard. This one's by Logitech, to capture those ideas and to bring them into a form that is potentially ready for publication after a few years or a few months, according to how we get on with our process. So Writing Life was the beginning of the channel, and I just feel it's transformed now into something else, because I've talked about a lot of writing ideas. They never stop coming, by the way. They are here all the time, whether I'm capturing them in these notebooks or in larger Moleskine type formats, or I'm using something like my Anchor Journal, which I've done a couple of videos about, and allowing those ideas to be, I think the only word is captured. To define them is one thing, but first you have to capture them, and so that's been a useful process. This week, for example, I've been writing everything by hand and using different fountain pens each time I leave the house to go and sit in actually a fairly different coffee shop. I think I've written in 3 different coffee shops this week, and also written twice at home. Interestingly, the lowest word count has been when I've been at home. I don't know whether there is some liberating process that goes on when I leave the house and I write more freely because I know I've got no digital distraction. Maybe that is it. But I started off as Writing Life and produced those first 10 videos. And then I'm just going to look at my notes again. And then it transformed into Nick Sturgeon Books, where I was producing quite a lot of videos around the themes of my books, like Climbing Out of Debt, Simple Self-Help, 10-Minute Budget, and some others, but I can't remember the titles. I think I've said Simple Self-Help. And Declutter Your Home. But I produced a series of 5 or 6 videos related to the topic and the themes covered within each of those books. And that's why I felt it was right to have the channel title be adapted, because you can do that very easily on YouTube. You literally edit the settings for your channel. So it became Nick Sturgeon Books. But since then, probably about a year ago, after my move to Mexico 2 years ago, I started to share more about not so much daily life, but the processes of being a small-time landlord, having some investment property in England and in Mexico, And I started a separate channel which was about Mexico life, and that has grown enormously until the point 4 months ago when I went to a bullfight and I showed a bullfighter and the bull that he was working with the cape that he showed to attract the attention of the bull. I didn't show any violence, but YouTube took that whole channel down, and I'm still in the appeal process 4 months later. It actually took me 3 months to reply with a no, but I think it was replied to by a bot. I can't prove that, so I've got to redevelop that process. So having two channels was the right thing to do for the amount of content I was creating. On the Mexico Life channel, I was purely creating content without any commentary, no talking heads. It was just me shooting 60-second shorts or 20, 30, 40-minute active filming on a walking tour, or a static tripod video perhaps put up on the corner of a street or in the alleyway of a marketplace, and doing that wonderful thing called people watching and letting the camera run. Recently I've been back to the UK again for several months, and then my wife and I travelled around Belgium, and you saw one of those videos which just came to me straight away. It was a walk around the little town of Ondenne in Belgium, where I spent so much time as a very young child and then as a teenager, and where I actually wrote my first unpublished entire book as a 19-year-old after working on a summer camp in the States. But it was great just to have that wander around the town again and to show my wife some of the places that mean so much to me now as a grown-up. I think I'm a grown-up, sometimes I'm not sure. But to share that sense of history from being rooted in a certain place, and I think that video was called The Importance of Place in Your Writing, and that was another segue with the channel. And what I want to ask you about is whether you mind seeing things like that, because it occurs to me that I like to record those sorts of side stories because they're part of who I am, but also because I know that I'm attracted to a whole image of a person and a sense of what motivates them and what they enjoy. And that's why those videos I was drawn to record very much for the Mexico Life channel, but occasionally here. And with that other series I've got called Writing Places, I've got about 20 videos now here. I normally upload those on a Sunday, and I don't have adverts in any of them. They are just static cameras in a churchyard or at a beach or in woodland, just capturing the sound that runs through the microphone that I've got here, and just gives you and I, because I enjoy those, a soundtrack that we can write to, and which may be helpful for us in supporting the cutting out of the digital distraction. So I can grab a pen and a notebook and sit at a desk here upstairs in the studio, or I can go to a coffee shop and I don't listen to one of those soundtracks because that sound wall is all around me of cars and taxis and dogs barking, and from the studio here I might hear the neighbours shouting at each other from one rooftop to another. They're not shouting in aggression, they're just I was going to say they're saludando. They're greeting each other from the different rooftops as they hang out the washing. And those background sounds, I increasingly, as I get older, I find those not just interesting and of fascination, but I just enjoy them because I need less focus now to write than I did 10 years ago. I can write much faster now than I did a decade ago. And I think it's just part of the aging process and knowing what you're willing to tolerate or not tolerate. So again, on the idea of toleration, how can you share ideas with me, or what is it that you'd like me to talk about in some of the videos? I'll continue producing content that I find might be helpful, but it's also good to have a little steer. Last night I looked at the comment section and I've replied to 703 comments, most of those over the last year and a half, which is half the life of the channel. And I enjoy that. When people will share thoughtful or sensible or philosophical or curious responses to my videos, I find that is something I really enjoy, just noticing that notification that a response has been left and dropping a response to the comment that you've left for me. So again, any ideas you've got, share them with me. This week last week on the plane, I read this George Simenon book, and I'm saying that because in my notes, one of the things that I've made a marker for is books. And I'm enjoying the fact that I'm now reading more and sharing some aspects of that reading with yourselves. But Peter the Latvian was the first book by George Simenon in a series that is vast in number. I'd have to check to see how many books he's actually written. I think it's more than 80, but I'm going to check. So we have a little fact check. George Simenon was born on the 12th of February 1903 in Liège, Belgium, very close to my town, the town that I have such a link with, which is in Andenne. If you go down the river Meuse, it's Andenne, Huy, and Liège. Those are the towns. He died in 1989 in Lucerne, Switzerland, where he had lived for the latter part of his life. He wrote 75 novels and 28 short stories with Inspector Maigret. Jules Maigret is the man's name. And what a great literary character. Here he says about writing that book, which he started in September of 1929, so he was only 26 years old. I recall sitting in a cafe one sunny morning. I'd had 1, 2, maybe 3 small schnapps laced with a dash of bitters. In any case, an hour later, slightly sleepy, I began to imagine a large, powerfully built gentleman I thought would make a passable inspector. As the day wore on, I added various accessories: a pipe, a bowler hat, a thick overcoat with a velvet collar, and since it was cold and damp on my abandoned barge, I put a cast iron stove in his office. And that reminds me, do you remember last week in a video I did about some of the stationery items I'd picked up in Belgium? I shared this postcard by Magritte. And of course, there's the connection with the bowler hat in both the painted image of the man from behind, but also the silhouette that we see cut out from the curtains. For me, that's really important. And I have a space on my wall where I'm missing a card. I took a photograph from here, from my collection of cards and photos, and I've got it on the wall in my study in England. But I think this one by Magritte is perfect to take the place of that missing image. So where do I go? Books, like I say, I've read that one. I'm not going to review it because it's a fiction story, and I know that I never enjoy reading other people's perspectives on a fiction story. Non-fiction I love. I adore reading people's reviews of travel books and non-fiction how-to books. But I always think that the magic of a fiction book is it's between the author and his or her pages and the reader and their connection to those same pages. But a great book, and I really enjoyed it. I read that, by the way, in one sitting on the flight from, where was it from? Paris to Miami. And then I had another flight back from Miami to Mexico City on Friday. So 3 flights in one day. It was an exhausting journey, but the opportunity to read uninterrupted in a nice comfy aisle seat while the aeromosos, the cabin crew, bring food and drink to you every few hours. What a great environment. The other book that I've started recently, a couple of days ago, and I'm a few chapters in now, is this one. It's by Alan Garner, and it's called Collected Folk Tales. When we were in England a couple of weeks ago, we went to a place called Alderley Edge, just to the east of Manchester, and had a few days there and just enjoyed being around the local countryside and the environment there. When I was a kid, Alan Garner had written an amazing book called The Weirdstone of Brisingamen about a couple of children who, out in the countryside one weekend, find and then explore a hole in the ground that leads to another kingdom underneath the mountains that are just to the side or just northeast of Alderley Edge as a community. And a whole world is discovered there by them, and they have amazing adventures. What's fascinating about this book by Alan Garner, and I'm reading more and more folk tales for some reason. I think it's important that let's have a think. I've been drawn to them by reading books by certain friends who are writing and including aspects of mythology within their stories, such as Sue Roberts from Yorkshire and her brilliant stories about somebody from an urban area connecting with their past, perhaps through a family member who's left an inheritance or a gift, and going back to rural areas where the folk tales or the mythology of that particular region or specific location are brought to life. This book by Alan Garner, Collected Folk Tales, it's been superb. 48 stories and poems, it says. What I love about this is that he's taken the idea of collecting existing folk tales and has brought them together, but decided to use the voice or the tone of voice and storytelling abilities that he remembers his grandfather using with him and his siblings. And that's how he has literally voiced those stories, and they are wonderful to read. And I've been reading them aloud, which is something I very rarely do, but I'm getting a greater sense of and a greater, how would I explain it? It feels like I'm taking the stories on better by reading them aloud than I would if I were simply to be opening the page and quietly reading through the text. No, it's been a super book, and like I say, I'm only a little way into this book, but it has a lot of promise, and I do feel it will affect some of the writing I'm doing currently around crime fiction and rural areas. But let's see. Really what I wanted to do with this video, as I said in the beginning, was raise a few questions about some of the themes that I would possibly like to address, but I'd like to know whether you would want to see those, and to raise the question, what do you want to see in this channel as I share? Looking at my notes again, I've talked about writing life. I've talked about how after a year and a half or so I transferred the title to become Nick Sturgeon Books, so that I could realistically and quite appropriately do YouTube videos around the themes of those books on declutter and household budgeting and such topics. And I've started to do a little bit more of insight into Mexico. I don't want to overdo that, but I think in my writing places videos, particularly the static cameras, where I'm setting a tripod and a camera up in a market square or outside a town hall along a busy street, and just giving us the opportunity to people watch and to see what happens, that I've been enjoying. And I've commented upon recent travel and trips where I've had insights into things that excite me and things that have made me who I am as a person. And the one example is that trip to Belgium recently, and talking about the influence of the town of Andenne on my early exposure to the idea that somebody could be a writer and have a lifestyle that is paid for and funded by their writing. And my reference to the, where have I put it? By my reference to the George Simenon book, I'm absolutely convinced that not so much the impact of his books when I was a young boy, but as I was a teenager and started reading his books in English, I know that his character, or the character of Jules Maigret, created by Simenon, I know that had an impact on me, and I think perhaps because I was reading them in Penguin Classics, maybe that also led me into collecting Penguin books. So there are lots of little links, and I'm hoping that I can, through my videos, share with you things that I feel have linkages, have connections to one another, sometimes quite oblique, but at other times, when I look back at them with the benefit of hindsight, I see an obvious strong connection or a bonding with one idea leading to another, and then on to the next one. And I think with my channel, where I am basically a 60-something sharing ideas that are generally around the ideas of books and writing and the use of stationery and journaling as habits, or the use of fountain pens such as these, one of my nice Schaeffers that I got from a store locally in Mexico, and the Bayer or the Yinhao Bayer 388 that I've been writing with on a couple of occasions this week. Having those sorts of themes, books, stationery, travel that's perhaps connected to the motivation I have received for my writing, those are the sorts of things that I would like to share with you and talk with you about on a regular basis. Let me just look back at my notes. Yeah, I think the final point is I'm not sure I can niche anymore, and I think the move to Nick Sturgeon Books was a move away from just talking about how to create a book or structure a book or how to write non-fiction. And there's plenty of videos in my playlists that you can see here on the channel. But I just want to be able to talk more about things that are fascinating to me and which interest me enormously, whilst I continue with the process of regular journeying, using my everyday carry sort of material, using my anchor journal, and adding thoughts to screen, thoughts to paper in such a way that I can continue to create videos here on the channel, and what I think I'm going to change back to just Nick Sturgeon. But I'd love you to comment, please, to tell me why you're subscribed, because my subscriber numbers are steadily going up, but I only have interactions with maybe perhaps 100 of you on a regular basis. I would love to know why you enjoy this channel, why you're subscribed to this channel. I've put out a few shorts this last couple of weeks, which I haven't done for a long time, and some of those have had 400 or 500 views and a dozen likes or half a dozen comments, which is wonderful. But why do you like them? What is it about the channel that captures your imagination or simply helps you feel that you can be brave enough to take a writing project and move through it to actually get a story together, or to bring a non-fiction theme to completion on your screen or on in your physical notebook? How is the channel helping you? I would love to know, because then I can create more content that is specific to what you would like. I know, for example, that some of my videos have more than 20,000 views. And they're not ones where I am reviewing a travel book. They are me talking for 5 or 10 or 20 minutes about my journals and doing a monthly review or a catch-up on personal finance and investment income that I will do sometimes in my anchor journal here. So what do you want? Why are you enjoying aspects of the channel? And where do you feel I can give you content that helps you in your journey as a writer or as a person who loves analog materials like the notebooks and the pens? Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a subscriber. If you haven't subscribed and you'd be willing to do that, it makes an enormous difference. But it also helps greatly if you hit like on particular videos. If you go back and watch some of my previous videos, or you enjoy some of the playlists, that helps me because it gives me an indication of what is popular. And it's your comments, your personal, taking a few minutes out of your own private diary and adding a few lines or a few paragraphs of comment. That's really the nub of how I can find out what it is that you like about this channel by me, a 60-something YouTuber who loves the journey and would like to deliver more. Thank you very much for watching.